Thank you for joining us for this episode of the podcast. I'm your host, Mike Scheibel. Today, I'm joined by Finnian Kelly. Now, Finnian, I will be honest, somebody I was introduced to, actually to my cousin, Doug Stryker, who I do love so dearly. But Doug said, this is a guy you should talk to for your podcast. So, okay, let's talk. And Finny and I had a great conversation, a phone call, which sometimes I think helps in these podcasts because you get a chance to already know someone prior to sitting down and talking. And, I'm not going to give too much away ahead of talking to this gentleman, except to say, I think he's extraordinary. I think you have been on some incredible journeys, a very intention setting, motivational speaker, incredible traveler, and just incredible businessman who's got to be where you are today. So without further ado, what's up, Finnian Kelly?
Hey, Mike, I'm so appreciative of that beautiful introduction. And it makes me think of it and reflect about the journey that got me to here. If you're interested in it, I must be interested as well. So I'm looking forward to where we go today.
Yeah, me too, by the way. I'm looking forward. Now, where are you in this present moment?
So right now I'm in Aspen, Colorado. I've just got back from 6 months traveling through Central America, where I did a speaker tour and ran a bunch of retreats. And that was an awesome time because I'd never been to Central America before.
Well, let's start with that up front. So what kind of stuff were you speaking on and what was going on down in Central America?
So I was speaking on intentionality, which is everything I do. It's all about defining how you want to feel and then taking deliberate action towards it. It's a philosophy that I've created to help people really get clear on what's happening in their life and what matters to them. And I do very immersive experiences with different modalities such as breath work and visualization and meditation. So it's really amazing to watch the transformations that happen with entrepreneurs. Now, I was actually planning, it was one of those interesting ones where I didn't actually plan the speaking tour. I planned the trip and I wanted to go travel. This is talking about intentionality. We do it on Easter Sunday every year. We do this exercise, which is our extraordinary day exercise. So I loved how you introduced me about extraordinary. And basically my girlfriend and I sit down and we meditate, we get really connected into a receiving mode. And then we just start writing our extraordinary day. And it's like, I wake up, I look at my partner, I do these different things and you go through the day and we read them out to each other. And this time we both woke up in a beach location, which was really interesting because we're both mountain people. We have identified with mountain life. And I was like, okay, that's interesting. Clearly our subconscious is telling us something. It's time to get back to the beach. And so we set the intention, well, let's go explore this summer. We'll go explore. We wrote a bunch of different criteria for somewhere where we could call a home, a beach location. And we traveled through different countries. And once I got to Nicaragua, people heard that I was there, some entrepreneurs, and they asked, well, could you put a speaking event on for me? And I was like, yeah, I'd love to do that. And then that started a chain of different events through Latin America, which was amazing. And what's incredible, I had no intention to go to Panama at all. It wasn't even on my radar. Panama's not advertised very well in America for some reason. And my girlfriend went when I was on another retreat on a surf trip there. And she was meant to come back and meet me in Costa Rica. And she sent me a message saying, and doesn't do that this often. So when she does, I listen. She goes, I think you need to come to Panama. I'm not coming back. And I flew, met her girlfriends, had a great night with six incredible women out in Panama City. And then we went to this beach location called Playa Venal. Well, I'm not sure if I want to share that on the news because it's such a beautiful location. Now everyone will go on a travel thing. And fell in love with it, became surfers, and we've ended up buying land there and we're building a home, which is just incredible. And the thing what was the most amazing was we had all these list of criteria. And then at the end, I threw just a little joke on. I said, it needs to have incredible pita falafels because I love Middle Eastern food. I love falafels. And it was a bit of a joke. And we arrived there in this little town. And there's like 3 of the most incredible pita falafel stores because it's all owned by Israelis. It's an Israeli culture. I was just like, okay, universe, let's do this.
I love that for so many reasons. I love how you just kind of ran with that story. Yeah, it's so funny. I've never been to Panama, but the people I do know who are there are Israeli. They kind of all have I guess, congregated down in the beach areas and have started to take that over. You mentioned intentionality, and you mentioned a couple workshops. I did one of your video courses, not even a course, but like kind of an intention setting. Your extraordinary day, is that what you just called it?
Yeah.
Which I found to be interesting. Now, I think I struggle with this from time to time because I want to be other places and where I am currently and looking to step outside. And the reason I bring this up is because though you're sitting here right now and people you can't see, but you have, Finn's got flowers and everything behind you. It is a picture, but it also is real life, if you will. Now, I bring all this up because you're in the space currently of rainbows, unicorns, and intentionality, but it wasn't always this, right? And I want to get to this for a couple different reasons. One, thank you so much for sharing how you got to Central America and what that journey was. And I wanted you to start with that because I think it's a wonderful, just kind of journey of what is actually happening in your life. And the crazy thing is, normally on this podcast, we would start with your backstory. Where have you come? We'll get to that shit. What I want, and I wanted you to tee it up now because I think it's an interesting way to like back time it of where you are, and you're glowing in this feeling of where that is. So, dude, thank you for being your intention and setting that up first. Really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Anything else you want to share about the now, about like what intentionality? I guess my question there is this: without giving away the secret sauce, what can people, the listeners, do for their own intention setting? And we'll get into some other stuff. But
yeah, I'm happy to give it all away because it's not mine to own. I've received it. It's just a way that I've received great messages from people, and I'm like, oh, this works. And the number one thing for anyone with intentions is it's got to be about the feelings. It's all about feelings. It's not, oh, I want to be traveling for a year, or I want to be living in this giant house. It's what do you want to feel? I want to feel free. I want to feel alive. I want to feel inspired. Now that can come in so many different ways. And when you get connected to the feeling, it creates an opening and a place of excitement. Now I was reflecting on where this sort of journey that led me to Colorado and skiing just before on a call. And we might go down there today, but I look back and I was a great manifester and great visioner, but I actually couldn't have anticipated what this was going to be like. Like the people I know, the connections I have, the experiences I've had, like my limited construct at that time couldn't have actually visualized this being this good. But what I could do was I wanted to feel a particular way. I wanted to feel alive. I wanted to feel free. I wanted to feel love. And then I just got connected to that, and I just kept getting more and more connected, and then I allowed it to be opened up. And why I bring that in is because so many people get focused on these goals, and they're like, I want this goal. And often a goal comes from a limited construct, comes from social conditioning. And they believe that if they hit this goal, it's going to give them a feeling, which they don't even know what the feeling is. And then they get there, and either they realize, oh, this isn't what I actually want, or they think that they've made it, and then they don't know that there's actually other possibilities. So goals can be really limiting. And that's why I say just all about the feelings, get connected to feelings. And every day, if I said one thing you could do, just think about 3 feelings that you want. So when I look at the different paths of intentionality, we have the grounding path, which is all about sort of the anchoring, the blueprint for your life. We have the love path, which is all about improving your relationships, bring more love into your life. We have the prosperity path, which is about money and how you earn, how you give, how you impact. And then we have the well-being path, which is all about physical, mind, and spiritual. Now, I just get connected to 3 feelings for each of those pathways. So for the well-being path, I want to feel strong, I want to feel grounded, and I want to feel mystical. For the prosperity path, I want to feel unencumbered, creative, and grateful. For love, I want to feel peaceful, playful, and courageous. So each day, I just start my morning getting connected to those feelings, and I start going, okay, I want to feel peaceful, playful, and courageous. So then when a little conflict arises in my relationship that day, what do you think I'm going to do? I'm going to have that memory in the back of the head. Okay, I want to feel peaceful, playful, and courageous. So what am I going to do in this moment? Am I going to react with ego? Am I going to get angry? Am I going to walk away? Or am I going to do suddenly in the middle of a little conflict, do a stupid little dance and be playful and lean in and give a hug And then I feel this incredible feeling. And that's really what intentionality is about. It's realizing that you have the ability to change any situation just through a behavior by getting connected to a feeling.
A question for you, because you'd mentioned manifestation, and quite a bit on the show or any of the guests we talk to, we talk about manifestation, and it's a superpower that I think a lot of us have seen, experienced, and have stories that go with. I would love for you just to break down briefly, like, what is the difference between intentionality and manifestation, and how do they play a part of this journey?
Great question. So I feel like manifestation is a tool of intentionality. So intentionality is a pathway to live an extraordinary life effectively. And it's a philosophy. It has 7 guiding principles to be able to help you stay on your path. And we can talk maybe about the path where that came from with the Camino later if you're interested. And manifestation is a method to help you, once you get clear on what you want, to then bring it to life. Because if you don't have a clear vision of your life, then manifesting is really dangerous. And a lot of us are doing that every day. We are manifesting the life that we actually don't want because we're more connected to things that we don't want, and then we manifest it unconsciously. So manifestation is a tool, and you've got to be very careful with it. A lot of people sit down, and this is traditionally what people do. What is prayer? Prayer is manifestation, effectively. It's about getting connected to something of higher being and then asking for what you want and to get messages and guidance. But when do most people pray? It's when they're in complete lack, when they're feeling lost. They're like, and then they put ultimatums on it. It's like, if you do this, I'll do this and everything. And I'm like, that's not how it works. It's the key with manifestation is you have to be in a high vibrational state. So you have to be in that place of love, gratitude, appreciation. And then you have to feel like you already have what it is that you want more of. Now that's the challenge. So if you want love, you have to get connected to how you already have love in your life, because you do have love in your life. Yes, you may not have your partner in your physical realm yet, but there's ways to get connected to love. So you've got to get so connected to it. Then you actually say, all right, I want to draw more of that into me. But what do most people do? They're like, I feel so sad. I don't have this partner. And then they try to manifest, and all they do is just reinforce that they don't have what they already want. So that's why I say it's separate, because you've got to get clear with intentionality first and then go, okay, now let's use manifestation to bring it alive.
This is great stuff. I know we're not diving into travel just yet, but I think this is all, really important foundations for this conversation. Again, to who you are, where you've been on this path, on this journey. So thank you for breaking all that down. I think it's a fun way to actually start and set up this conversation, especially I think where we are in the world, and even this time of the year, end of the year, where people are reflecting and thinking. And I know for myself, I don't say this a lot, but I have a birthday coming up, and like I go deep. And I know you just had a birthday, so happy belated. And sometimes we start to spin ourselves, right? We start to think, but how do we come back? How do we get back to that source? And man, you're dropping some serious knowledge. Let's go back. Where'd you grow up?
So I was born in Sydney, Australia, and actually, when I was just under 1, we moved to Tasmania, where my mum's family was. So we grew up in Tasmania, which is that small little island in the bottom of Australia. It is a state. It's where the Tassie Devil's from. It's a beautiful state, but it's very small town syndrome. And it has everything we need, but a lot of what we don't, which is something. And I always felt that. I felt that I didn't belong there. And when I finished school at 16, I just knew I had to get out. And my pathway was actually to become an army officer and go to like the equivalent of West Point, which is Duntroon in Australia. And that was my ticket out. I was always thinking, how do I start my journey out of the state? And that's where travel has been a huge part of my life. I've always used travel as a way to just be a little bit more creative and give myself permission to leave the constructs that I've been brought up in or the environment I've created and just see what else is possible. And that's where I like the manifestation that we started with, because travel is a great place to manifest. Like when you're in travel, you're out of your box. Like when you're in home in your normal world, you're in this box and you can't see out of the box. But when you're in another location, you already see yourself out of that box. So then you've just got to feel it and start allowing it to really come alive.
Heck yeah. I like to say you become your true authentic self when you travel, right? Because you don't have those constructs of the home life or whatever you think it's supposed to be like or what you're conditioned to. You'd mentioned something, and I know a lot of my own time spending in Australia or Aussies, I know like there is that wonderful sense of I want to travel, I want to get out, I want to leave the island that has so much, also so little. So after the army, you traveled, you started doing some things. What in these early parts, and I want to get to, because you had a very freaking successful career for a long time. I want to kind of like paint this picture for us. Like, where did you go from there? Did you run back to Australia after your army days? Like, how did you set yourself up now that you had a little bit of taste of the open road? What came to that for you?
Yeah, so the army was actually in Australia. So that enabled me to leave Tasmania. And first, okay. So Tasmania, we call it the mainland Australia. That was a big adventure. And the way to access that was through sport. So already I was traveling through a young age. I was like, I'd get selected in this national tennis team, and that would get me to go to Melbourne and Sydney. And that was already an adventure. Then the army was
part of the ticket. That's part of the ticket to get you out of there.
It was. And then the army was another piece. It got me out of Tasmania. I could earn my own money. And then I knew that we were going to travel around Australia. Then the biggest trip, and I haven't thought about this for a long time, it all led to where I am right now. It was when I was 18 years old. I'd already had a year in the military. And one of my good friends, Tyson, we just said, let's go on we had a month off, and we said, let's go on a Europe trip. Like, let's do this. Like in Australia, a lot of people do a gap year to go to Europe and work in England. And we missed out on that, obviously, because we chose army and the university to start, and we went, let's go do this month. And we went and booked around the world trip, and it was started in Hong Kong, then it went to Europe, then it went to Canada, and then it went to Hawaii, back to Australia. And we booked a Kentucky tour, which was a classic. Have you done one?
I've not done one, but I'm a big fan, and B, I talk to them all the time. Like that's incredible that you're sharing.
Yeah, they're awesome. So here I was. So we arrived in London, had a couple of nights there, and then we get on this Kentucky tour, which was 16 days, and you go through like 14 countries in Europe because it's so close. And every night's an adventure. And I spent Christmas in the Rhine Valley on the Rhine River in Germany. It was beautiful snow. Had so many great adventures, and that's where I just came so alive. And what is interesting, what you said about become your true authentic self, I noticed that when I traveled, and as a young man, I was driven a lot by women. It was an appeal, and I was appealing to international women. But back in my own hometown, it was like the construct of the school, because you weren't there at the exact, like you weren't I wasn't in the cool group, but it was just the different conditionings. You weren't as appealing. And I noticed that some people would travel and they weren't appealing to any women. And then at home they were. And that was a fascinating experience where I realized that the stories that may have already been on you. And when you're going to a new group, people just see you for who you are rather than who you were or anything. So that was really interesting.
Let's stop for 2 seconds on that. Yeah. That is a really poignant point. And we're getting to some of these travel stories, but I love the thing you just said. And I think that's a wonderful kind of look at reasons why we travel, reasons why people get stuck in their own shit. And like, I'm completely guilty of this stuff all the time. I talk travel. I don't travel enough anymore. But the thing you just said, I think, is a really beautiful construct to how travel helps us grow, how it helps us expand and see these new things. I didn't mean to cut you off, but like you're just hitting them out of the park here. I love it.
Yeah, because so often you have changed and evolved, but the other people can't see you. They keep seeing the different version of you. So when you get to go out and then people see you for the first time, you might not have even realized you had evolved. And then they see you for this, and you start seeing yourself, and it's like, oh, I am that person now. And that's super, super cool. So I'm not all about women, but back then, I have to admit, I was a young guy, and it was a lesson. And I remember it so strong. I was like, what else is possible? Who else can people see me as for who I really am, rather than what I was conditioned to be? So we do this incredible tour, amazing. And then we had a couple of days in London, and we were meant to be then flying to Canada, and we're going to spend some time there, and then to Vancouver. And I was just on a walk. My friend was, I don't know what he's doing, maybe hungover or something. And I just went for a walk, and I went into this travel agent. It was just one of these weird things. And back then, this was 2002 or 2003. So we didn't have like phones or anything like that. And I went into this travel agent. I received a message going to this travel agent, and I was looking around, and there was just this sign on the wall saying specials, leaving tonight, last minute ski trip to France and Switzerland. And it was 10 days board, all food, traveled there for £89. So like $180. Must have been a new operation. They just wanted to fill some seats.
Jeez.
And I just got so excited because skiing was a huge part of my childhood. Even though Tasmania, we have like a hill, which is like literally 180 feet, but we're obsessed with it. And I used to ski race as a child, but then we had no snow. So I didn't ski from 10 till 17. And here I was, 10 to 17. So I'd skied like once as an adult. And then I saw this and I went, this is what I need to do. I just need to do it. So I found out if there was 2 spots. I then ran 2 miles back to the place, said, Tyson, look, this sounds a little bit crazy, but will you back me on this? I want to do this ski trip. It'll mean that we'll have to push all our other flights and pretty much have like one night in Canada, literally not even a night in Hawaii, and just come home. And he could just see how passionate and how alive I was. And he's never skied. And he's just like, yeah, go do it. Just work it out how to make it happen. So then I ran back to the travel agent. Then I had to like get them to change our flights, book the thing. And I went, and that was the most awakening trip for me, because I fell back in love with snow. It was, my legs just started operating. It just felt amazing. And I just went, that has to be part of my life for the rest of my life. And now here I am spending a lot of time in Aspen, skiing 100 days a year. It's been a huge feature of my life. And that all came because of travel and being open to messages and seeing like, why not? Like, why can't we change our plans? Like, yep, we've got this structured thing, but like, this is calling you right now. So let's go do it. And I'm so grateful to Tyson, because it really changed my whole life. Like, I think about all my decisions. I sold a company. I turned a company remote. I moved over here. Like, I left a very good life in Australia to expand into America. And it was all driven out of skiing.
Well, you just shared a lot at the end there that we got to get to. That's phenomenal. First off, I love once again that you just kind of keep coming back to these messages and running with that feeling and you're going for the skiing. So you just kind of dropped some lovely, lovely little nuggets of things to come. Set us up with how we get to some of this stuff. Set us up to how we get to what is this company that you sold? Or, I know there's we'll get to Camino in a minute, because I think that's kind of a big pivotal conversation. Yes, we're teasing some stuff. How did we get to some of these other things? If it all came through skiing, well, what does that mean? You just teased us with such a nugget, and that's not there. Give us more details.
So when I left the military, I left at 24, and I just started just bouncing around, just traveling a little adventure. I actually had a friend who put me on their staff travel as a companion, and that was the best. Like, so it means last minute you could just jump on a plane for super cheap, and often business class, and just have this great experience. So I was just bouncing around, and then I ended up meeting a woman who I fell in love with, and we started a business 6 weeks later, which was really, really amazing. That I even, looking back, thinking about that. And that started a 9-year journey of creating businesses, traveling all around the world, and ultimately led to us starting a business in America and moving over and spending a lot more time, which was amazing. Now that has transitioned, that marriage is over, but it served an incredible purpose. Like, we both had that wanting to just what is possible. And it was like, as soon as we came together, because we both gave permission to, yes, this is possible, it was just off the charts. It was really, really fun. And it was a great journey. And I think that's a lesson in life as well, is that just because you love a place or a person, you don't have to spend all your time with them for the rest of your life. I love certain countries, but I don't want to live there, but I love coming back to them. There was a period in my life where I was like, that's the type of travel I like. And now I've changed, and it's okay to, and I think that's actually a hard thing to actually accept sometimes, is what you used to love. Sometimes you don't love it anymore. And like, I used to love traveling and partying. Like, it was a big part. And I remember this one trip where I was just like, I don't enjoy doing this, but I thought that was travel to me. I had identified traveling as partying, hooking up with women, doing crazy adventures. And then suddenly that didn't fulfill me anymore when I was like 20 something.
Man, I think you're dropping so many nuggets here that I know literally resonate deeply with me, with who I am as a traveler on so many levels. And I trust that it also connects with a lot of our listeners and community, because I find that we all say things that really connect with people, whether they're just pieces of a puzzle. You mentioned, and I want to go back to this because you mentioned skiing kept kind of interweaving. Now you talk about this relationship and starting the businesses. Where did skiing come in a couple of times? Because I'm curious how you painted that picture.
Yeah. So what it was skiing. We actually, when we first met, we went skiing like 2 weeks later in Australia.
Yep.
And we just loved it. And she'd done a big ski trip through multiple countries. And we said, well, let's just make that part of our life. We'll just always go on ski trips every year. And Australia's not very good for skiing. People still love it. But once you've tasted the American snow or Japan or Europe, you want to go adventure. So we just said an agreement that we'll do a ski trip every year, and which was pretty foundational because we just started a business. And this is how, like, getting so clear on what matters to you is really important. So in our first year of starting a business, everyone would say, you can't go on a 6-week European trip. And we went on a 6-week European trip in our first year of business. We also went to South America, and then we also went on a ski trip. And what that did for us was it just said that you can always do these things. Like, there's no excuse. If we can do it in our first year of business, then we can always do it every other year. So we used our business, and we made sure that our business never stopped us from travel. And that kept us making us have decisions. Well, we've got to hire these people. Well, let's lean on virtual. So we were virtual 8 years before we've just been forced into this sort of dynamic. And we just always, even though everyone else was saying, oh, you can't do this, how do you lead when you're over the other side of the country? Other side of the world, we were just like, well, we can, because we are. And that was foundational, where the driver of skiing or travel just kept helping us make certain decisions, even though in the short term, it might seem this doesn't make sense financially. But I can tell you, financially is just one part of your life. And it made sense because it made us really, really happy.
Wealthy, not necessarily rich, right? Mm-hmm. Wealthy and that stuff. Or sorry, I say rich in experience, not just necessarily wealthy in monetary. You know, I will say it's funny. It's like one of the years that I just kind of picked up and left. And same thing with the job front. Like, I think I made more money that year than I ever did. And just like the consistency of it. And quite honestly, like, I think about that a lot, of just that feeling. Well, let's get to something, because, you know, you have this career and this new love, and you're traveling, you're making money, you're doing your thing. I want to get to something that you shared on our call, this pivotal moment. And I would imagine this is kind of your most meaningful travel experience, right? And I'm teeing it up to you, but I think you know where I'm going. Set us up for here. How did we get to the Camino, and tell us about that experience for those who don't know what it is, and why this trip? What did it do for you?
Awesome. So in November 2017, I went on a pilgrimage, an ancient pilgrimage, which is called the Camino del Santiago pilgrimage. It's a 500 plus 800 kilometer pilgrimage, where it starts in the southwest of France, and in Saint-Jean-de-Port, and then you cross over the Pyrenees, and then you walk across the whole width of Spain, which, even just in your thought process, you're going to walk across a country. That's pretty fascinating. And it's been used as a spiritual pilgrimage. It used to be very Christian based, but people who just, basically anyone who's going through a period of their life of something's happened to them, some trauma, they want to move through something, they want to discover themselves. It's a wonderful place because so many people have walked it before. So it's a very well-marked trail. You don't have to plan that much, which is really nice. And there's support the whole way, support as in there's little towns that you can stop in. And it just opens you up to possibilities. Now, in that time, that year, that was a very challenging year for myself. My marriage had separated, and it was almost a traumatic event for me, because it wasn't a decision on my part. And it was effectively, I'm grieving some death right now in my life. And I realized it was very similar to actually grieving death. It was someone had just suddenly gone out of your life and you thought you were on this pathway for the rest of your life, and then it was just disappeared in a moment. And that was confronting. And in that time, I really saw it as, this is my opportunity to face everything. I have to take responsibility that I played a huge part in this happening. Now, I couldn't change what had happened with her or what she was thinking, but I could focus on what was my journey, what led me to here, because we co-participate in these relationships. And I just went, well, there's a lot of things. So I hadn't had a relationship with my father. I had some resentment against my mum for things in my life. I'd had some body dysmorphia problems. There was a lot of running, a lot of like not facing situations. And I just went, all right, here's my opportunity. I'm going to sit in this house of mine and I'm going to just do inner work. And I went on the inner exploration for quite a few months, which was super confronting. Like, it was definitely the harder path in the short term, but now looking at where I am now, and that's how I ended up getting here, was I always knew it was going to be the easier path for the long term, because it transitioned me into a place of love rather than a place of fear. I knew that fear was going to take over my life otherwise, and I was going to be low vibrational. And I went, that's not the way to live life. And then during that, things would start showing, and I started getting these messages for the Camino. I watched a movie which a couple of guys walked the Camino, and it's called The Way. And then I picked up a magazine and there was a bit about it. And then a book I read about it. And on my third one, I went, and I actually had my mum over at this time, which was interesting. It was the only trip that we've ever done together. She came over to Colorado and we spent a week and we watched this movie. And I said, I think I'm going to walk the Camino. And she actually went, I think that would be good for you. Which was funny if you know our relationship. It was just a good moment. And so then a couple of months later, I decided to go walk this pilgrimage. And it was, what made it more special is at the last moment, my brother, who's 4 years younger than me, who we have not spent time together since he was 7 and I was 11. I basically left home at 11 and I was very independent the rest of my life. And he came with 2 weeks notice. He literally came. I said, I'd really appreciate it if you came. And we came and we walked across that country. And I had so many awakening moments on that time. I had a lot of beating myself up in the first third. They talk about the journey of, there's 3 parts of the Camino. The first part is all about the physical. It's testing your physical ability because you're walking a lot, you're carrying your pack on the back, and you're like, whoa, this is a long way to go. So you go through that element. The second part is the emotional. You've got into your groove of physical, and then you start facing things that led you to here, and you start releasing. And then once you've released, you then go down to the spiritual, the third element. And that's how it's broken up. And what was interesting was I did it a little bit different. The physical was no problem for me at the start. I was strong, I was healthy, I'd been in the mountains, and I was just plowing through, and I was just hitting it on the emotional. I was just like facing everything that had happened in my life and taking responsibility, forgiving myself, just going through this journey. It was super challenging. And then in the middle bit, what was interesting, but I was very in my head at this time as well. It was very in my head about what I've done. And then eventually, at about 2/3 in, my body started actually starting to hurt. And I started to break down certain parts of my legs. And my brother was the opposite. He was so broken at the start. The first day, his feet had 100 blisters on them. And then it was brutal. And we walked across the Pyrenees. It was this first day you walk across the Pyrenees. And I will never forget this moment because my brother didn't know what he was getting himself into. And we're walking up and it's like complete fog all over this. We're walking into this just mountain of mist, and people die on the Pyrenees. It's a challenge. And the women at the passport office, they were already like, you're leaving this late. Like, you're crazy. What's happening? I went, no, we'll be fine. And I remember on this pitch, and I was already a few hundred feet in front of Tristan, and I looked back and I just had this amazing moment. He was just like head down, beaten up. And then he looked up at me, and you could just see this younger boy, like this little boy looking at me, just going, what have I got myself into? And I just smiled at him, turned around and just walked. I knew I couldn't indulge it. We had to get over that mountain. So he was just broken at the start, but he's just a trooper, and he just got stronger and stronger as the trip went on. But the first couple of weeks were hard. So I get to this place where I've like broken down my body. And at that point, I couldn't be in my head. It literally was 1 foot in front of the other. And I was just like so present. And this was the key. I got to a place where I wasn't thinking about anything. I wasn't beating myself up about the past. I was so present in the moment, walking across this desert. It was like, they call it the Mesito. It's like this 80 miles of just literally you're walking into the sun. And it's just this desert period. And I got to this place where suddenly these little sparkles started happening over my body. I started feeling this wave of emotion, this frequency flooding through my body. And I know now it was just love. It was just flying through. I felt connected to every living thing. There was trees out there and I saw the sparkling. I heard birds tweeting and I just broke down in emotions. It was just so wonderful, so incredible, so uplifting, like I've never experienced before. And it was something which I knew was out there, but I didn't know what it was. And that was my divine moment. That was my moment where it was like, you are loved, you are love, you have nothing to worry about. And I went and sat down on this park bench, which just happened to be there, which was quite interesting. I always think about, why was that park bench just there? It was in the middle of nowhere. And I'm like, did I even make that up? And I just looked at the sun and I sat there for a couple of hours and just let that sink in. And my life has never been the same since, because I've never felt alone. I knew there's something bigger than me. I felt this connection, and that's the power of travel and following little signs. And that really set myself up to really complete my healing journey and where I am right now, which is now spreading the messages of what I learned on the Camino and all about intentionality.
How long did the actual Camino take you total?
So we did it too quick. So I had a deadline because I had to be back in Australia for a legal battle, which was one of the things that contributed to our divorce, not between us, but over a business that we sold.
Sure.
Some unethical people. So I had to be back in Australia on the 24th of November. So we had 24 days to complete it, which is, it's meant to take maybe 40 to 50 days, like to experience it. So we had to like go, like some days we did 25, 30 miles. And that's a big day walking in that repetitive place.
Yeah.
And what was fascinating, this is just another example. Part of the challenge of the Camino is at nighttime, I had to deal with back in Australia with lawyers dealing with these things. And I'd be in places where there was really bad internet because I didn't have a phone for the trip. So we literally didn't have connection while we're walking through the day. And then I'd get onto a computer at nighttime and do some of these things while I should have been sleeping after resting. And then, so I was dealing with all this. And so that would make me challenged throughout the day. And then we arrived, we're at Santiago. We see the cathedral, we sit down, myself, Tristan, and this Danish older gentleman who ended up walking a lot of the way with us. We'd sort of come and go, but we pretty much walked the Camino. And we're having a glass of wine to toast the experience. This was like 8 a.m. And I turn on the computer and there's an email saying, oh, the judge has been changed, the court has been pushed back. And it was this lesson of the Camino of just going, you just never know what's happening. And it's why not to get too caught up about the future and not stress and just be in the present moment. And I was really proud of myself that I did allow myself to be in the present moment with the Camino. Like I wasn't beating myself up the whole time about the legal battle. And then naturally it didn't even end up happening, which is a lesson I've carried with myself a lot.
Well, I was going to say, it sounds interesting that you embarked on this journey, going through what you were on every level, but then also at the same time carrying the weight of what this legal battle was with you. Is, I'm sure there were times where you were up and down. You mentioned a couple of things that we talk about here, and I say here is within travel, meaning talk about being present, and you talked about really being in nature. And I like to say nature is the best therapy.
Yeah.
And I'll share this, and like, it's beautiful that you brought these up once again organically. And I say that because from all my conversations, Finn, what I've heard and learned is that there are these incredible themes and principles that people talk about that are part of their meaningful journeys. And it's become this really like beautiful, almost thesis for me of like realizing like, there it is again. Right. And like, it's not me standing on a pedestal being like, here's how you have a meaningful journey. This has nothing to do with me. Quite frankly, like you said, you want to give away ideas for intentionality. So go and be and have that. Like, that's how I feel about this is like, this isn't called Mike's blog. This isn't me standing on pedestal. This is me saying, this is the shit I'm hearing from incredibly extraordinary travelers. So thank you for sharing that. Thank you for sharing it so authentically and real, because I think it's beautiful. And it was real to say like, you were going through some shit and you leaned into being in these present moments and taking in the incredible surroundings around you. At the same time, going with the flow of where you were and letting it happen.
I appreciate it. You've just triggered something for me. I actually realized one of the reasons why I picked that date to walk was I knew the month leading up to the legal battle was just going to be miserable. I was grieving the loss of my wife. Now I was grieving, like dealing with this and financial ruin and everything. And I just went, well, wouldn't it be better to go walk towards the legal battle? It was almost like, at least like do something in that time. And that's why I intentionally picked that date, which I had completely forgotten about, was because I was like, well, it's going to be horrible sitting in my house waiting in America, waiting for the time zone in Australia. Like you might as well be going walking the day. And that really relieved me of a lot of the suffering. So that was cool. And then the other thing is you are right about these principles. So in intentionality, the 7 principles, and it's not my philosophy, it's the intentionality philosophy. I've just been a conduit to it and I've learned from other people. And one of them, which is the second principle, is discover your true nature by practicing the power of presence. And you just hit that. That was the principle you just shared, is when you practice your presence, and it helps if you go into nature because nature supports your presence, you then connect to your true nature. And that's what it was for me. I now know my true nature is love. It's divine. It's infinity. It's beautiful. So now whenever I find myself not in that place, I just go, okay, clearly I'm not doing something. I need to get in nature and I need to practice the power of presence, and I'll rediscover myself again. And then everything just happens really, really easy.
Yeah. You said something. I want to share one of the other principles because I think it's going to kind of wow you as well. Is not all journeys are measured in miles. And sometimes the greatest journey we will ever take is that inner journey, right? And by you saying like, look, you being in the presence of love and all these other little things coming to it is all part of it. And, you know, I'm an advocate for people getting on planes and going places. But I think at the same time, you know, a lot of us learned during these lockdowns and COVID that you're not able to go places. What if it is you're walking around the block, or you're going to a new neighborhood, you're going somewhere new? How do you change your perspective and a way to look at things in yourself in this bigger journey that we're all on, right? I have a question for you. Do you know what the definition of travel is according to the dictionary?
I don't, and I'd love to know that.
So this has become super fascinating for me, is that, again, through COVID and everything, I started with these principles and I've had a really fun time putting these together. And then recently, in the last couple of months, I looked up this definition. And so the definition, according to the dictionary, is to go from one place to another, generally over a great distance. And it's interesting because, as I keep saying within the confines of these conversations with the podcast guests or any guests we've talked to, I believe we're really changing this definition on some level, because sometimes it's not about going anywhere, right? As we just said, it's that journey. It's you just sitting there going, I got you. You know, and this travel is just such an interesting, fun way to look at it. And so I do have this poignant question that I would love to ask you is, what does travel mean to you?
Great question. So when you're sharing it, I was just thinking about that. I just see life as one big adventure, and travel to me is adventure. It's exploration. It's being open to the new. That's what I think travel is. So you could be traveling in your bed. Like sometimes I do. I go time travel in bed. You could be traveling in a breathwork journey. So I'm realizing that it's not just about moving in a physical place. It's about you traveling through your emotions, traveling through your programs, traveling through what is potentially possible. And I'm now in that place where I truly believe we are time travelers, because I time travel a lot now. I go into this place where I come back in and I'm a little boy, and I do work and heal things there which help the present moment. And then sometimes I go forward and see where is future Finnian going to be. And then I go, okay, what does current Finn need to do to move myself towards that? So I'm traveling all the time. And that's been a really, really cool experience for me. And if you start seeing that life is just one big traveling adventure, man, you can be traveling in your little suburb that you grew up in. I bet there's parts that you haven't explored.
Yeah, well said. I think one of my favorite things is, it's the journey, not the destination, right?
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned earlier in intentionality and everything, like, oh, you're getting to this goal. You're getting here. Oh, wait, there's another peak. I'm still going. Oh, wait, there it is. I'm still going. Because you're never getting to anything. It's not about getting anywhere. It's about just being in action. I ended up meeting Mr. White Cloud, have become really good friends. He actually lives in Venice Beach. I see him quite often. Awesome. And every time I see him, I'm like, you're just in my journey. You're just this guy who shows up, and it's just this wonderful reminder. So anyway, I felt called to share that. Any other travels or journeys or stories that you really want to, feel moved to share to the community?
Yeah, I was just reflecting on what happened recently. I was in Ecuador, and it was one of those weird moments where it felt like I was time traveling, and I was in the moment realizing that, I'm actually living my extraordinary day right now. It was this surreal moment. And then as I realized that, it didn't like put myself in a state, oh, now you're going to ruin it. It was more like, oh, what else would happen on this extraordinary day? And it would just suddenly appear. So on this day, I was about to do a speaking event in Quito, and I was staying with a entrepreneur who, actually, this is cool, who I met in Machu Picchu a few years ago. So every year I do a pilgrimage for my birthday, so the Camino is one. Before my birthday, which is November 26th, which has just happened last week, I do a pilgrimage. And part of that is just to learn, discover who I've become. I get clear of the year. I look at what happened, what did I learn? And then I set an intention for the next year, like a one word. So last year's was love. This year it's allow. And this one year I went to Machu Picchu, and I went with a friend, and we walked over. It was incredible. And then I had a sort of entrepreneurial leadership conference afterwards. And this was, I met Esteban there, and we just connected. And he was from Ecuador, and he just said, if you ever want to come to Ecuador, my place is here. And he knew that I loved riding horses, and he has his own little horse ranch on the bottom of Mount Cotopaxi, which is this incredible volcanic mountain in Ecuador. And I said, I'm one of those people, if someone offers, I go, I'll be there. And I remind them that I will be there. So I'm just checking in that you actually are legitimate about this. And I have this saying, if people offer and then they don't want you, it's like on them. It's like, just show up and have fun. And it's a real lesson. So be careful who you offer, especially with me. I'll show up. I'm one of those people. And then obviously the pandemic happened, and so it was a couple of years past. And then on this trip, I said, I'm coming. I'm going to do this. And he was so happy. He was genuine. He goes, I don't offer it to everyone. I just knew this was a connection. So we're in Mount Cotopaxi, have an incredible meal, and then we go horse riding. And he has his own private trail. And we went up to the base of Mount Cotopaxi. And it was this suddenly, so for a week, people are there for weeks and they don't see the mountain. And on this morning, the one day that we were there of the week, it cleared, opened up, and I'm there, and I'm holding my partner's hand on horses, looking up, and I'm just like, wow, here I am. And then just the day just kept on getting better. It was just like, we had meditation. It was so special. I ate great food, and it was all about the feelings. That's all I was. I just felt so alive. I felt free. I felt mystical, and it was incredible. And that's the power of connecting the dots through travel. It was being open, getting a lead. Someone says, oh, you could come here, and then you get there, and you can't even pay for this experience. This is the only type of experience where you can have if you have connections. And that's the wonder of travel, is you get to have these great connections with people who want to show you their life. And now it's cool. He's coming to visit in Aspen in a couple of months with his family. And it's going to be cool to have that different experience. And that was connected through this appreciation of nature. That's where it really was. We both, I truly believe at the start, it was, we're very different people, but our common ground was just this love of nature and horses. And now that there has developed a friendship, which potentially we wouldn't have been able to do if it was just our two individuals without that connection.
Wow. Man, I got to tell you, I talk to a lot of people, and I work really hard in being present in these conversations and being there, but it's hard for me to think about anything else other than this, because I think this is the greatest conversation I had in this moment, right? And I realize why, first off, thank you again, Doug Stryker, for saying, you should talk to this guy. And I enjoyed our first conversation. You're someone I feel like I've talked to a bunch, but you're someone I feel like I would meet at a hostel or somewhere traveling and be like, that's my new dude. Mm-hmm. And, you'd be like, hey, come to Aspen. I'd be like, I'm on the plane. So thank you for being so real, authentic, and just intentional with your stories. I appreciate that. And I appreciate how you've carried yourself and the highs and the lows, right? Because it's not always rainbows and unicorns. There's some shit that shows up. And I think one of the things I know I've learned from travel that I like to share is life sometimes is about what's happened and how you get through it and when you get through it. It's okay to feel the feels, but when do you move on? How do you come back to being here? And thank you. Thank you for what you're creating. Really just adore you and appreciate you.
I really appreciate that. And I just want to share one thing, because I realized, why do I get a lot of opportunities in life with travel? And I purely believe it's because my vibrational energy. So I might be in a low state, but I still have the ability to not bring other people down. And when people are around me, I give them an uplifting experience. And then they're like, well, I want a bit more of that. And then they might say, why don't you come on this trip tomorrow? Like just a random meeting on a beach in Mexico. That I could go a whole story about that. And then suddenly you go on this other adventure because you lifted them up. And I believe that's what a message I'd love people to take away from this is, like, be aware of your impact on others. And are you being an added value to their life, or are you being a taker of their energy that day? Like, see how you can build your energy up to give people. Now, that's not being fake with energy, but you can just tap into energy. You can get grounded, you can get connected, you can look into the awe of life and realize that, like, the world always looks after you, the universe always looks after you, and just keep moving forward. And then things may start opening up for you rather than being consumed by the story that's going on in your head.
I love that. You said something I just have to really just kind of piggyback on. You said, how are you going to contribute and how are you going to be there rather than taking? And I read this definition somewhere once where it said the difference between a tourist and a traveler. A tourist comes in and they're there, they encompass the area, but at the same time, they take. Where a traveler comes in and they look, how do I leave this place better? How do I come in and really just become part of the area? So as you're really saying, be a traveler, be open, be part of community. Don't just take from it. I love that, dude.
Have I got time for one last little story on that?
Well, you got time for one, and then we're going to play a speed round.
Okay, awesome. So an example of this, on the Camino, you're walking a lot of the time by yourself. Your head down, you're going through your own journey, and you sort of see people, and sometimes you see them once, sometimes you see them multiple times. It just happens. So what we did was, at dinner, whenever we're at an albergue, which is these sort of hostels designed for the pilgrims, we would just say, everyone just come sit in dinner, and we'll just start. Tristan and I would be the creators of the conversation, and we would have people sitting down, eating. Some people just talk to themselves. And then at the end, we would do this round of appreciation. So if there was 10 people there, we would do a circle, and we'd be like, I'd ask someone to go, okay, pick a number 1 to 4. And then I'd say left or right. And then what it was, okay, if it was 2 to the right, then I had to say what I appreciated about the person 2 to my right. Now, we are a bunch of pilgrims who don't know anything about each other. And sometimes some people hadn't even spoken to each other, but we don't realize that we all make impact on each other. So well this said. Is the first night I'll never forget. This one woman shared about a smile my brother did to her. And it was just this one moment, it was like 4 days ago. They've never said a word to each other. And he just gave a smile, and she shared that moment literally changed my life. I was in a place where I was feeling completely devastated. I was reliving this trauma. I was questioning the point of life. And you just looked at me and you just gave me a little smile, and it just lifted me up. And I just went, in that moment, there is something better than me. There's something worthy to pay attention to. And that, I get I get emotional about it, thinking about it right now, like the impact.
I do
realize the smile or the little saying hi. And that happened every night. We'd hear about these little stories. And that's where I realized you think you're a stranger in this world. No, everyone's watching you. Everyone's feeling you. Everyone's experiencing you. So see what you can share with them. And yeah, and I've used that the rest of my life. Like whenever we have dinners, we finish appreciation rounds, because it's even people who have been in your life, you don't realize that something you did 4 years ago might have changed their life, and you don't know. And it's an opportunity just to share and reflect that back to people, which was, yeah, that's been a life-changing practice I do.
Let's jump into a speed round. Ready? We're going to put about 60 seconds on the clock starting now. What is your current country count?
52.
Place you still want to visit?
Israel. Yeah, Israel. And I want to actually do the Abraham Trail, which is a walk through all the way through the Middle East.
Place you tell people to visit?
Peru. South
Window or aisle?
Aisle.
Mountains or beach?
Whoa, I have to do both now. I'm a both man.
Airbnb or hotel?
It's interesting. I mix between the two. I'm going back to hotels a little bit at the moment.
All right. Boat or train?
Boat.
Kindle, hard copy?
Kindle.
Sunrise, sunset?
Both. I use
North
them
Pole,
every
South
day.
Pole?
North Pole.
Do you collect anything from your travels?
Practices that I apply in my life.
The thing you need on a flight?
Water and good headphones and earplugs.
Best travel lesson?
You never know where the path is going to take you.
Favorite airline?
Singapore.
Favorite hotel?
Like a little boutique, trendy experience.
Finnian Kelly, what an honor. Tell the people where they can find you on the interwebs.
Great. So my website would be the best place, which is finniankelly.com. And all my social handles are the Finnian Kelly. And that's where you'll find me. And I just encourage you to, on my website, there's an intentional living guide, which I recommend you download for free and just really start applying those practices in your life, because life will come a lot better when you do.
Hey man, truly honored to spend time with you and just appreciate your stories and how you are just moving forward on your path. Thank you for sharing, and wish you happy holidays and all the best and all love. And all right, people, we'll see you on the open road very soon. Peace.